See what you can do about that.
On that note, I'll call the meeting to order. Please rise and join us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us, those in the audience and those at home. We'll go right to our first item on the agenda, which is the PBL Catering, Inc., DBA Hillview Country Club, 149 North Street, transfer of common vicular all alcohol license application. I'll open the public meeting.
I do.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It's on the left-hand side.
Where is it?
Left hand.
Oh, left.
No.
My other left.
Yeah.
Public hearing, want me to move that podium?
There it is.
There it is, okay. Notice of public hearing, Board of Selectmen. In accordance with Chapter 138 of the Massachusetts General Laws, a public hearing will be held by the Board of Selectmen in Room 14, Town Hall, 235 North Street, on Wednesday, November 7th, 2012, at 7 p.m. on the application of PBL Catering, Inc., DBA Hillview Country Club, for a common vicular all alcohol license to be exercised at 149 North Street, North Reading, Mass., first floor, lounge, dining room, basement, lounge, dining room, and storage.
Second? Oh, no second. No motion yet. It's a public hearing.
Public hearing is open. Would the transferee like to come up? Mr. Lee?
Good evening.
Good evening, welcome.
Thank you.
Have any experience in this?
A little bit of experience. I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
Would have any questions for Mr. Lee? All right.
Just, you might want to just inform the public, Pat, as far as what your plans are, as far as in relation to what the current operation is, what you're planning on doing, and
Sure. With all due respect to Mr. Page and the operation he's run for the last 25 years, we're trying to improve the facility and operation, food, quality of service and such, bring a little bit more pride back to the facility itself, be it downstairs in the pub area, as well as the function in the ballroom upstairs. It's going to be a long-term plan. It's not going to happen overnight, and we're going to work very closely with the Hillview Commission to execute that plan over the next few years.
Mr. Messeri?
Bookings associated with a transition,
Yes.
that's always been a little bit of a, how do you make that work?
Well, we've got a fair number of bookings going into 2013, and we've worked very well with Mr. Page. He's communicated very well with us, and any kind of inquiries that come through the website or phone calls to the Hillview, because at this point in time, we obviously haven't taken occupancy, so any phone calls to that facility and such get forwarded to us, and we're handling it out of the horseshoe. But we've had a good line of communication between both parties, and I think we're on top of any and all inquiries that have come through.
And it's essential, this liquor license, make the transfer by the first of the year.
That's our hope.
Or sooner.
Yes, that's our hope, yeah.
Which raises a question, Steve, maybe you know, is that we're transferring a license, so Burton's running the facility through the end of the year. So the transfer, can that be made at a specific date?
As soon as the
issue
transfer comes back, there can only be one license issued at a time for the premises. So in the most optimistic scenario, the ABCC approves Mr. Lee's license application. We won't be able to release it until the first of the year, when Mr. Page's license would no longer become.
So we control that, not the
Yes, we do.
ABCC?
Yes, we do.
and it may be conditional. You know, the ABCC
Oh, yeah.
usually likes to attach conditions to things, condition upon this, that, and the other thing. And hopefully, if there are any conditions that are attached to it, which may be related to the B&D Golf Enterprises as opposed to Mr. Lee, all the conditions may be satisfied, and then smooth transfer.
Mr. President?
Is there any chance that the liquor license won't be approved by the end of the year, and that there could be a gap? And if there is a gap, do we have a contingency plan?
Typically, what happens is the license application, we will submit it within 3 days to the ABCC. The ABCC then appoints an inspector to go out and vet the license. We're not part of that process. We're not privy to that process. We receive back from them an indication of, as Mr. O'Leary had stated, whether the license has been approved or approved with conditions set by the ABCC. So officially, we have no official role in that process.
So the contingency plan, so should we have a contingency plan? That, I know we don't have any control, so we don't have any control, so there should be a contingency plan, so Mr. Lee can operate the facility.
Unless he
After-
gets the transfer, there's no license in his corporate name for him to operate, at least a liquor license, out of that
Right.
facility.
Well,
So
I mean-
we're sort of hamstrung by the ABCC on the transfer, and I think that's why we're doing this, we're actually having a special meeting tonight to try to get this done before the end of the calendar year.
So I assume it's a
So
low
if
risk.
there are any issues, they'll
Right.
reveal themselves, or show themselves soon enough to hopefully be resolved before the end of the calendar year.
Do they have a time limit to respond?
Unfortunately not. We see all types of inconsistency on their end. Quick approvals, slow approvals, there's really no logic to how quickly they move through these license applications. All of the unfortunate timing requirements are on us, not on them.
But it's my understanding that we have another issue pending with an unrelated license.
Oh, we do.
So there's conversation
Right.
between our council and ABCC council anyway, so.
And if
So
we
they
were,
shouldn't be surprised by the application that comes in.
if we were to become aware of an issue, we would certainly want to entertain a conversation with our legal counsel about expediting the process. That's our contingency plan. We've already alerted our counsel as to an unrelated license issue. We've mentioned that this one will be coming to the ABCC, and he's aware of it, so we do need to continue to have those conversations with our legal counsel.
So, Mr. Lee,
Yes.
do you have any functions planned for, even say, the first 2 weeks of January that could potentially be at risk?
We do.
Gotta be optimistic.
I'm going to be optimistic, I am.
Yeah.
But-
It's a question that needs to be raised so that, if it gets tied up, that no time is lost in between dealing with
Yeah.
the issue. That's, would be my concern.
I just would add that the license request is a transfer. That was the ABCC's request. We had suggested that the appropriate way to look at this is as a new license. However, the ABC has indicated that in similar type of situations, they request that it be done in the form of a transfer. That was their decision, not Mr. Lee's decision.
That's
or my
right.
decision.
Yep.
Yeah, I understand that.
And it certainly wouldn't have been our wish
Yeah,
No.
to handle it that fashion either.
No.
I know. Joy.
Anything further? Any questions?
No, sir.
No, other than, and again, as you pointed out, Burton Page has served the community well, and Hillview Country Club done a great job since 1988, and this is the first transition.
That's right, yeah.
And if we have to transition to someone, I think we're very fortunate. We have a great local businessman and homegrown couple that operate a terrific facility already, and I think they're going to do a great job, and looking forward to you taking over.
Thank you, Steve.
You agree with those statements?
I don't know if we want
Looking
to.
forward to it.
Commission have anything? We have 3 members of the commission, they all set?
Gentlemen, are good? Okay. So close the public, anyone from the public? Anyone have comment, question? Mr. Massey?
I just wanted to congratulate Pat, wish him well.
Thank you, Bob. Anxious to get in there. Anxious to get things rocking and rolling in there.
Very good. All right, other than that, close the public meeting. And board members, any comments? Ready for a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the transfer of the common victular all alcohol license from B&D Golf Enterprise Inc. to PBL Catering Inc., DBA Hillview Country Club, 149 North Street, North Reading, Mass.
Second?
Motion is second. Anything further? Hearing none? All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Congratulations. All the best.
Good luck.
Good luck, thank you.
Thanks. 1/1/13, transition goes 1/1/13.
No, there was no,
No, we put in, it goes into the ABCC, and then as soon as it comes back, we'll prepare a license, but we cannot release it until 1/1/13. And that would be nice if that happens, that we have to hold the license until then.
All right, gentlemen, nice to see you.
Good night,
Thanks,
gentlemen.
gentlemen. Thank you. Moving on, item 2 on tonight's agenda, meet with the assessing manager regarding property valuation procedures. And I see our assessors here.
Deb, I set up the projector just in case you wanted to project anything.
I didn't put anything else on the side.
Okay. Just have that one.
I don't have that technology in my office. I assume you guys all have the packet in your...
We do. Good evening. Thank you for coming this evening.
Thank you. I do have some extra packets if anybody wishes. I'll share them. Okay. What we're looking to do tonight is to understand the process, the procedure for classification. Oh, I'm sorry,
That's okay.
Steve, I thought you had
Anybody else
one.
want one? I didn't print it out.
Oh, I'll take a hard copy.
It's in our packet, yeah.
It's in the packet.
I'll take a hard copy. There's extra.
The way I'd like to start, you guys have heard the classification meeting and the hearing every year. So I think to go forward, so that we have an understanding of how the minimum residential factor is obtained, is to take questions. Because I've explained it, and I think maybe there's questions that I'm not explaining during the hearing. So why don't we start with questions either from the board?
Mr. Prisco.
I'd like to make a suggestion. That particular spreadsheet that Delaney you have in front of you, if it's okay if I put it up on the screen, and maybe we start there?
Sure.
Because that kind of tells a little bit of a story, and then you can fill in the questions why we may not
Sure.
understand, if that's
Sure.
okay.
I just don't want to do the whole classification, go over all
Right,
that,
right.
when
I
I'm
agree.
going to be back here
Less
doing
than 2
it
weeks.
Yeah.
again, you
No,
know?
Sure.
I think it would be,
And if it's,
Consider it a rehearsal, you know, dry run.
I appreciate yours.
not a problem. Mike, I should have had you put the whole packet on there.
I can put it up on here. I already have it. Greg uploaded it up in Dropbox, which I can obtain right from here. It'll just take a minute to warm up. And I guess I have some hard copies. Anyone like a hard copy?
I have some more too. Mike, those are in the packet. I attached them
Oh,
to mine.
I don't think your packet got uploaded. We only have an old one.
Yeah, you're still missing a couple of
Yeah,
columns, Mike.
I'm just gonna scroll over here in a second, because it just doesn't fit.
Okay.
But I built this, I put this together with the data that you provided us. So there's nothing here that you didn't provide,
Correct.
except for I put in these nice little arrows, and I put in some of the percentages, so people can see the percentages of changes that we've had over the last 10 years. So the columns in the blue section on the left are the residential property analysis, and the other side is the commercial, industrial, and personal property. Let me see if I can focus that a little better.
Otherwise known as your CIP values, which is commercial, industrial, and personal property.
So this column up in here, that's 2003 and ends in 2012. And you see this column, let me get my pointer rather than stick my finger in the way here. So people at home don't have to be. So this here is what I was looking at from the data you provided us. I looked at this median property value, and you can see from year to year, it changes, going up for the first 5 years. Well, I don't know really what happened after 2003, but the 4 years following, it went up. And then you can see the tax rate did slightly go down. And when you look at the percentage of change, 7.1, 19.6, 9.8, 9.5, you actually go over now and look at the CIP that you provided us, and you look at the percentage of change in it as well. You had some ups and you had some downs. Percentage of change is slightly less overall, but you go through the whole thing, what really stuck out to me was when you look at the median home value, property value, after 10 years, it actually increased by 32% over 10 years. When you looked at the CIP, it only increased 7.2% over.
Can I just elaborate on that a little
That's
bit?
why we're asking the question.
One of the things you find in what you call bedroom communities, which is what we are, we're looking at that percentage change in the increase, which is only taken in the median property value. I'm on residential only right now. But what we're not looking at is the percentage of parcels, which is why I added that in there. Because that's a very, very big factor. Our percentage of parcels have grown over the years 3 times to that of our CIP. So that is a very, very big factor when it comes to the median values. You see what I'm saying? In other
I'm not
words,
sure I actually understand that fully, but.
on our residential properties, we have more growth rate,
Yeah.
and our inventory, if you will,
Mhm.
is much higher and grows at a higher rate every single year. And it's very consistent if you look at it from 2003 to 2012.
Yep.
Now, if you shift over to that CIP, our growth rate on the CIP values have only increased, I believe it's like not even 1%
Right.
over that amount of time.
Yeah, I understand that
So
part.
what happens is your inventory, you have much more inventory to work with on the residential, and you have property selling at a much higher rate. Your CIP values, because you don't have the same amount of inventory, nor do you have the same amount of transactions. So you don't have a lot of shift and change in the CIP.
Yeah, but that doesn't play that big of a factor. And when you set these values, I know it has some kind of a factor, but it doesn't have the largest factor, because at the end of the day, like when you present this to us since you've been here, you've taken this number and you said, with the new tax rate, this is what the average tax bill would be.
Value, not
Value.
tax.
No, but you also said,
I give you.
based on a $14.38.
Right, right,
The tax bill would be this, based on $447,000, right?
absolutely.
So if you actually look at that from year 2003 to 2012, that tax bill has changed by 32%.
Absolutely.
And that's the point I'm trying to make. And then when you look at the tax bills here, they've only seen a change of 7.2%.
In 2005, this is another scenario for how that has potential of getting better. 2005, it was state mandated that all assessor's office, 351 communities in the state of Massachusetts, instead of doing every 3-year revaluations, which are your big cert years, we're coming up on one next year. In 2005, we implemented what's called an interim adjustment year. And what that does is we actually revisit all of our values every single year. And how we do this is it's a mini reval. So these average median house values are actually what people are purchasing property for. In other words, when they buy a home, I have to analyze those sale values within neighborhood, within size, within style. And they all have to meet that criteria. That started in 2005, every single year. On the CIP side, the income and expense form should have been sent out. Well, I don't want to say that. We send them out every year now. As a matter of fact,
Yeah, that's this column over here.
yes. Starting for 2013, and all business owners have received these notices, we've sent out 3 mailings. The initial, a second, and a final. If we do not receive those income and expense forms, which is your commercial and industrial data back, there is going to be a $250 fine attached to your tax bill.
Oh, if I could jump in here. That's why I had asked this information actually 2 years ago, and I was very appreciative that you were able to provide this to me. And so when you're doing this and you're setting these values, you can see we don't have the data before I had asked you back in 2011. But look at the rate of returns. 41% of your commercial property owners submitted the paperwork back. So how do we actually have really good, solid data? I mean, that is obvious to me that there's a really imbalance here. And that's all I was trying to show here. I'm not out here, and I wanted to say right out of the gate, I'm not here pushing for a split tax rate. This has nothing to do with that. This is just to understand the process and understand why we have such an imbalance. And maybe you're gonna come up with a clear answer for me why it's there, but I just don't see it, especially when you only have 41, maybe 50% of your community, commercial community, actually giving you the information you really need.
But we are up to 53% for this year. So that's a significant percent increase.
But it should be,
It
should be 100.
I understand that. Maybe once the $250
But actually,
Fee is
to me,
attached.
what I see here, what this story tells me, it tells me that by them not submitting, it actually is working out in their benefit, and it has worked out in their benefit for the last 10 years.
Mr. Chairman, just some point.
Still here?
Yeah, Deb, a couple things. First of all, on the CIP median property value, it seems very low in relation to the value of commercial property in the town of North Reading. I mean, I look at what we have out on Concord Street, I look at what we have, on Route 28. You say the average value here is, $400,000, $395,000. That doesn't resonate well. I can't, tell me how that happens. Because I just happened to pull something out from 2009, which is contrary to this, the presentation that you made to the board.
I wasn't here.
Okay, but the presentation was made to the board, again, that whether you were here or not.
Yeah.
The process is the same.
The process is
The same, 351 cities and towns across the Commonwealth. And the average home value was $490, and what's this, 2000, what's it have here? Same thing, $490,200. And then on the commercial industrial, it was $922,581 that's presented to the board. And here, it's $409,700. And again, even looking at today's.
Can I see what you're looking at, Steve? Because
I'm looking
where
at
I
this chart.
wasn't,
No, I'm just looking at this chart here, which was derived from the information.
because I took my numbers right off of the DOR.
Let me just ask you this, does that make sense to you? The average commercial value
Didn't make
Property
sense to me
value of
either.
commercial property in North Reading is $400,000.
So that people know what you're pointing at, Steve, you're reflecting the
Right here, I'll
2012
point it out.
CIP.
The 2012 CIP median.
All of these.
Oh, actually,
Let's just deal
2009.
with the one that you're dealing with this year.
On that 395, that is including your personal property too, which,
Which drags it down.
exactly. So if I took just commercial and industrial properties and did the math just from those two,
Which is to me what it
Classes.
should be.
right, but if I was doing CIP, so,
Well, because it nets
Yeah,
out,
no.
but it does net out that way. I mean, you're collecting taxes.
but it does,
and it nets
by
out.
doing the CIP and including the personal property, which we have 206 accounts, you have some accounts, a nail salon's a little over $1,000. So what's happening, you're right, that is gonna misconstrue that.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, that number is a number that really should have been only commercial and industrial parcels or another column.
That's what I.
Right, okay,
Let's see.
because to me,
'Cause that would
this
be-
is a misrepresentation in relation to the analysis that's been done. It isn't true. You know, it can't be trued up, because if you're saying, and again, I operate a small income tax business on my own, self-employed, out of a spot on Main Street, and I pay a personal property tax of about $3 or something, or $5, because all I have is a computer and a printer or something like that.
And a file cabinet.
Yeah, you know, so that's,
Right.
you know, and you're telling me that that's factored into the equation and takes the property that's out on Concord Street that's valued at $3 million, and all
Or
of a
$6
sudden.
million.
And all of a sudden,
Or
the
$6
average is
million.
$1.5 million.
Right.
You know,
Yep.
that's
So
not
maybe
real. So
in-
so what we're looking at as far as the comparison, the analysis here is flawed. When we're talking about
Yes,
parcels and real estate taxes, not personal property taxes, real estate
Right.
taxes. Because personal property tax is not necessarily subject to classification.
actually it is.
Okay, but even so.
It is.
Or even it
It-
is, my $3,
which
my
is
$3,
why I-
you go at 150%, I'll give you 4.
Excuse this number.
450.
Right.
There's no doubt.
So,
It skews it significantly,
Right.
because based upon what was presented to us by the assessors, and I didn't pull out 2010, but 2009, it was $920,000, not 300.
and it
Not
is
400.
flawed from adding the personal property in there. My apologies if we were really looking to obtain something different. You know what I'm saying?
I think
But-
part of what we're trying to achieve here is really figure out the impact of classifying, not classifying, the growth, the property valuation of residential properties versus what's happened with commercial properties in the
Right.
town over the same period of time. And then what has the net effect been on their tax bill?
Right, is it really 7.2%? I
I
don't
don't-
believe it is either. I was, when I saw this, I was a little surprised, and that's why actually when I made this request, I suggested that we only look at the commercial properties, we only look at industrial and personal. But I understood, I thought you just had to present it this way, I wasn't sure. Again, I didn't want to touch any data.
I
that
didn't have to
that was
present
out
it
there. I
anyway.
put up what you provided.
Right.
So maybe we could take the action between now and when we meet on the 19th to actually see that.
And again,
Yeah.
I wasn't able to dig out, although last year's, I did look at what's in the Dropbox.
Yeah.
And it said 320, whatever it was,
It
or
did.
396, or whatever it was, 388, I don't recall what it was. But it was XXXXS, and then it was 388. And again, usually when that hearing takes place, I sit out here rather than out there, here. It didn't make sense either.
And
Because it should have been closer
the
to.
personal property being added
Well,
in
you know,
that
my
is-
suggestion is if we're really going to do a proper analysis and understand, you know, the effects and what has actually transpired over the last decade, as far as who's paid what share and what has been the fluctuation in the valuations, you know, take the personal property out of it, out of the equation.
I agree.
I think the industrial property should still be included in it, you know, commercial industrial, but.
Absolutely.
But the personal property
I agree.
taxes are.
As long
it's
as
just a
everyone-
small, obviously, it's a small portion. I mean, if you look at
It's 1.7% of the tax levy.
1.7% of the tax levy,
Right.
yet it cut the tax valuation in 2009 by more than 50%, average median, by more than, you know, probably by 60%. So it skews the numbers. So I think it would be much more informative for the board and for the public if we used
And I
parcels
can
and property
redo, I'll
as opposed to
redo
personal
this
property.
for the 19th, as long as everybody understands that the personal property is subject to classification, because that would be wrong of me to just omit that and not be
I think you could put an asterisk
part
in there, or
of.
even a little separate section in relation to personal
Or
property
a
taxes.
separate column.
A separate column for personal property taxes and what the effects would be on that. But 1.7% skews this thing by over 60%.
I don't disagree. That's why I didn't believe these numbers to be correct. That's why I asked for this.
Yeah.
'Cause
So
it
the numbers
doesn't
are
make
not
sense.
incorrect. I think the assumptions
Right.
for the presentation are useful.
I just
For the
didn't
analysis that we're
understand how
looking to
this
have.
Would work this way. But this is also a very concerning.
Well, that's what I was going to ask.
It's
But
very-
I
that's
do
what I was
see improvement on that,
You do,
and we
but
will continue
You're
to
at
improve
about
on that.
half. Now, I don't know how that breaks out once you
Yeah, I was gonna
separate
say.
the personal property out of that.
Yeah, good point.
So I think you have to
It's-
take another look at
That's-
those
The-
percentages once you break out personal property to see what your return is
The
on
income
the
and
income and
expense,
expense on your commercial and industrial.
the income and expense forms are only issued to commercial and industrial.
Okay.
Personal property has to file what's called
another
State
form.
Tax Form 1, and that's their formal list.
So you're at half on commercial and industrial in terms of the responses. So Go
And
ahead.
with the $250, fee that we are imposing on the tax bill, we're hoping that that sends the message we want
I
this
understand,
to
but
be.
what have you had to do in order to value those properties, or put some value on those properties when
Yeah.
you have an owner that doesn't return the income and expense form?
What happens if you look on, it's Exhibit B, which is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th, 6th page. This is the income certification spreadsheet. And what we use this spreadsheet for, this is not open to public, which is why you see the blacked area. What we do is we put all of the data on the sheet. If we do not have enough of retail, Mike, I'd rather not put that on there, only, with the detail that we obtain here, we take all of the income and expense that we receive from the town that's first used. And of course, we need an ample sampling in order to arrive at a rental rate per square foot per class. Because an office is going to yield a different rental rate per square foot than a retail. Their vacancy and their expenses is also included in that analysis. If we do not have enough of a sampling, what I do is I take it from local communities that have a similar community. Of course, I'm not going to go to someplace that's not comparable to here. There's also other means of data that I get from internet websites. One of them is CoStar. One of them is LoopNet. Those are all commercial sites. I use them for my own business. They're very informational when it comes to rental rates. In other words, when something comes on the market, I get notified of it and so on and so forth. And I chase them down. So that's how we get that information. Now, if we have, say, 67 retail properties in town, I only receive half of that. That's enough of a sampling, because you have a high and a low rental rate. Your low rental rate may be a very small, trying to think of one, maybe the little strip mall over here where T.A. Sullivan's just moved in. His rental rate obviously would be a lot lower than something down on 70 Main Street in the Walmart Plaza. So we have to have a high and a low to fit in that parameter of, and that's done per use also. And the expenses and the vacancy is done the same way.
Couple of them.
The 2012 number, the bottom row, that is a fiscal year?
Yes.
Fiscal year, it is. So, over the past 2 fiscal years, you've gone from unknowns to 41 and then 53%. Has that fine been in place over that period of time?
That fine is just going in place this year.
Okay, all right, I missed that.
That's effective for 2013, and that has been on all 3 mailings that have gone to them.
Mr. O'Leary.
Couple of questions, comments. First of all, on the spreadsheet here, what do you use for a cap rate?
We're using 9.5 right now, and that's excluding the tax factor.
What page are you on, Steve?
I'm just looking at the spreadsheet here. I'm looking at, the NOI on
Page
the
7.
property. I look at the NOI on the property. I know it looks like a little under 10%. And then what the income value was of, is it, and then what you're putting on for property value.
And the cap rate, we do check that. That's market. I mean, that's all market driven. What the banks are willing to lend to a business and what their risks are. That's where we get all that information from.
That's why I'm questioning it, because I happen to be a bank examiner. It just seems to be a little bit high, believe it or not.
Yes, and next year being the reval, I did look at that this year.
But
But
so
next
we're
year
just
being the
questioning
reval, do I see that going down? Absolutely.
Yeah. That being said, though, in relation to the $250 fine for not complying, I would venture to say that's a small price to pay for not complying, for a number of people.
I
So-
don't disagree.
I mean, you have a considerable amount of experience as far as appraisals, as far as property valuation. I think you could, we have a fair number of applications on an annual basis for different licenses, whether it be a liquor license, common victual license, where they have to disclose to the town through another department. And I think we enhance the communication level between our departments. We know what they're getting per square foot now over at, well, we know what they did for Stop and Shop, and what they're doing now for the new Chinese restaurant that's going in there. We can figure out what the square footage is. If you apply that and then take the vacancy rate out, my guess is you're going to get a pretty good valuation as to what that plaza is really
Absolutely.
worth in relation to what they're telling you, or what they agreed to, or what you... To me, what would prevent the Board of Assessors from giving you their best guess, best professional estimate, let's put it that way, best professional estimate on some of these properties, whereby my guess is if you do that and give the town the benefit of the doubt, the compliance for the income and expense returns would go up significantly, because you would have a significant number of property owners coming in for an abatement. And then the burden would then be upon them to prove that the assessor's estimate is wrong.
Correct.
To me, it might take a little bit more time for the assessors in the first year, but after that, my guess is the number of abatement applications for that would go down significantly. But the accuracy of the information that we need to make a proper valuation on the property would be enhanced significantly.
Which is what I am trying to
Well,
obtain.
yeah, see, I think the $250 may entice some people, but many others, and the bigger ones, who are saying, you know what, my property's worth $1.6 million, but in the town's eyes, but really I know it's 2.2.
And to,
Yeah, I'll take the $250 fine instead of paying an additional, $1,100 in real estate taxes.
unfortunately, I am governed under Mass General Law. 250 is my max.
No, I'm saying, forget the fine.
Oh, you're saying forget the fine?
Forget the fine,
Adjust your
and
values.
you adjust your values in order to get them to comply. If they're gonna come in for an abatement,
Oh,
they're gonna have-
I
they're going to
understand
have to-
what you're saying.
They're going to
I
have to
missed
prove
what
to you that your assumptions were wrong, and the only way that they could legitimately prove it is to bring in the
provide
tax
the
returns.
lease.
The leases and the returns. That's it.
When I do, that is somewhat in place now. If I
Well,
do.
it's not in place to the point where you only got 53% compliance right now, but.
Right, but this is the second year they've
I know.
gone,
No, no,
you know,
and by the way, let me state
unfortunately.
again, I should have
Yeah.
stated this up front. Since you've come, things have improved significantly. You've been doing a terrific job.
Thank you.
And again, we've had some lapses over the years in this particular department in relation to getting things in order and keeping them on track. And you've done a very good job since you've been here.
Thank you.
And I mean
Mass
and I mean
General-
that sincerely.
Thank you, Steve.
But-
Going back to your thought on that, with the appellate tax board, if we did have a filing, which we would have a filing, on any commercial industrial property, if they have not returned what's called their 38D, or their income and expense form, they cannot be heard at the appellate tax board. Unfortunately, the appellate tax board, and I'll say this on TV, does not uphold their written laws, because they'll bypass it and they'll hear the hearing anyway. And it is
But that's
very
fine. But
frustrating.
I'm okay with that. I'm okay if they, ignore their own rules and regulations.
Right.
If the applicant has to go before them, because at that point, they will have had to produce what you were looking for.
Exactly.
And then you
I
can make the
demand
adjustment
that.
and avoid the hearing. If their returns and their leases show something else, then you make your adjustment and you give them the abatement. If it doesn't, it sticks or it goes up.
Right. I did have.
So to me, skip the fine, force the compliance on the part of the
To
property owners.
receive the data.
And again, all we're asking for is everybody to pay their fair share.
Correct.
I've never been in favor of a dual tax classification, but never have I stated that nobody should be paying their fair share.
Right.
And to me, this is the only way, or not the only way, but this is one way in which you can get compliance quickly. Whereas, if the assessors would, in the absence of the property owner giving them the information, in their professional judgment, put a number on it. And put a number to where you think it's pretty darn close. And if it's pretty darn close, they're gonna pay it. And if they don't, they're gonna come in and they'll prove otherwise. And then you'll have a pretty good system in place where the compliance level will go up significantly, the valuations will be true, and then we'll get on track as to what we really know that everybody's paying their fair share.
Last year, we did have a couple of applications, and it was written that, it's called part of discovery, and I do have the right to request any and all information. And I did receive quite a few lease agreements, and that was very helpful, because that becomes part of the database, and that's what I need to build on all of this.
And that's the database.
Without the data, I can't.
That's the database for the entire district.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's
So-
correct.
Because it'll set an average for a square foot and the type of buildings you have and type of operations and all the rest. So-
Absolutely.
Right. So,
And there's a couple of new ones going in right now that I'm fighting and searching to get the information on. And I like your suggestion as far as
But
they
again,
do have to come here for a license, and maybe that could be part of
Well, again, even
the
when- even when Stop and-
process,
I hate to
you
pick on
know?
Stop and Shop, but when Stop and Shop went up the street here and are paying above market rates in order to keep someone else out, that increases the value of that property for the term of the lease and maybe beyond.
Absolutely.
And also affects the rest of the tenants in the facility there.
Unfortunately.
As such, the value of the property goes up, the value to the town and themselves goes up, they owe the town a little more money. They should be required to produce that lease and allow you to put a number on it. So,
I agree. I
They
agree.
want to play those games and those sorts of things, that's okay. And if the property management company and the owners of those properties want to do that, with it comes a price. But in the meantime, they're collecting a significant amount of rent, and their taxes are a small portion of total expenses in relation to what they're collecting up there.
Absolutely.
And again, I use that as an example only because I'm still ticked off at them, but.
The data is the most important thing on your commercial and industrial. Like I said, your personal property is 1.7% of your tax levy. The information that comes in on their state tax form 1 or their form of list, as it's known, I do go through that. And, we do make sure that their assets, if they've disposed of something, it's removed. If they have added something, I add it. For new businesses that come in, talk about working with departments, I receive documentation from town clerk to open a new business. Now, in some cases, some businesses, the smaller ones, of course, wouldn't take out a business certificate, but that's why I drive the town, because that's how I pick
But we
them
have a
up.
small portion of our business community are property owners. The vast majority of our business community are tenants.
Right.
So, it's incumbent upon the property owners to produce the leases and the information and the income and expenses. And again, a lot of the leases are triple net where, the cost of the real estate tax is gonna be borne by the tenant anyway.
Anyway,
But,
right.
by the same token, they still should be paying their fair share. When they're not in compliance with this and your data isn't up to date, how can we best and most efficiently get that data, accurate data to us? And to me, it's the assessors give it their best professional judgment in relation to what they believe their property value to be, and then it's incumbent upon the property owner to prove them wrong if they disagree. And you'll get the expenses, the income and expenses pretty quick. So the $250 fine, anybody that's paying the
Small scale in the
anybody that's
scheme of
paying the
things.
$250 fine is not being fully assessed.
Take a closer look at
Bingo.
those properties.
Yep,
You
it's
know,
true.
Anybody who's paying the $250 fine is not fully assessed. Right, and again, the information that you get as far as income and expenses, I don't know what your requirements are in relation for their proof. Are you requiring copies of the leases plus the income tax return?
I do, they're very reluctant in giving me their Schedule C.
Well,
Certain ones,
that's what I say then, give it your
You
best
know.
professional estimate as to
But
what it would be.
I do request a copy of the lease because, in some cases, actually, I should back up a little bit. Once they've received the income and expense form in the mail, I'll look at that, and if it seems, I'm not feeling comfortable with it, then the contact goes out to obtain the copy of their lease and their tax returns. Like I said,
Generally,
99%
it's a Schedule E rather than a Schedule
Schedule E.
Schedule E.
So, no, I
So,
don't typically get them.
Well, if you don't get them, assess them. And you'll get, no, really. And you'll
No,
get it.
yeah, I
And
hear
again,
what you're
you have
saying,
enough-
Steve, it makes
You have
sense.
enough experience,
Yeah.
and so does Greg, and so does Yano, to know what the best guess on the property values are. And again, they fluctuate based upon vacancy rates and all the rest.
Right.
But based upon square footage and what it is, well, I don't disagree. You need some current data from the current property owners in order to nail it.
Right.
And if they're not going to comply and they're not going to cooperate, I believe you have the tools to use to encourage them to comply. And I would encourage you to use it. That's all. And so again, if anybody's going to pay the $250 fine, would be the first ones that I go and look at.
Right.
Because, it's cheaper for them to pay the
You're right.
$250 than it is to pay the full
You're
assessed value of the
absolutely
property.
You're absolutely correct.
That's why
That's just my take on it. I'm sorry, didn't mean to dominate.
No, that's a good suggestion.
Yeah, I think you handled it fine. Thank you.
But this is why I had asked for all this information, because it just doesn't seem fair, the way it works, especially when you have that limited kind of response to the request from the assessor.
But this is skewed just because of the.
I don't disagree.
There's
When I got the
personal
data from
property.
So
Deb,
I think that can be,
I didn't disagree.
I can
That can be extracted
fix
right
that
out, you
for
can
the,
fix that.
exactly.
Yeah, but I don't think you're gonna find, this is correct. The 32% increase on the residential side is correct.
Yes.
This 7.2%, I don't think you're gonna find it, it's gonna go up, but I don't think
well,
you're
if
gonna
you
find it
double,
vastly
if you at
more.
least double that
I-
number, Michael, it's gonna go up
I
significantly.
think you're gonna look at if I had to guess, just knowing what the commercial and industrial average
Commercial, industrial
properties
average
are, and
is
I'm
gonna-
not gonna name them because I don't know the
I
exact
understand.
number.
59 is what-
I think you're gonna see somewhere in the range of a high
Gotta double that.
12%.
High 12%. A high
I
12%.
think that's what you're gonna see.
I think that's
And
what
I'm
you're gonna see.
speaking off the top of my
Yeah.
Again.
head now, just knowing the numbers.
And again, we're just trying to find a balanced approach to this, make sure it's fair across the board for everybody.
Right.
And because I don't want to do a split tax rate. I don't think that is the right way to go. But I also don't think, when you see your 87.5% of this community had a 32% increase in 10 years, and the other side's only seen 10, 12%,
But I
we
would,
just need to understand that, especially when the data has been not forthcoming.
That's fine, but if, you know, there's a direct correlation, as we've always all been arguing, in relation to schools. You know, if your school system is good, your property values are gonna hold or go up. And again, as far as the properties from 2003 on that have been built, have all been homes that are in excess of, you know,
800,000.
Yeah, 750 to,
Yep.
I've had
$1.5
house
million.
sales this year. I mean, they talk about a declining market. I have had house sales this year over $1 million. I have had house sales 900,000. I have a lot of house sales happening in the subdivisions, and I don't really want to get into the names of them, that are in the mid-nines.
Yeah.
I have houses that are being sold that I have in my average neighborhood. I have them assessed at 350, just say. They're selling for 425. That's what makes that part go up. So if I look at that 32%, should we do some work on the commercial industrial? I have no problem with that, and I am trying. I mean, implementing
And we
the
wanna help
fine
you.
and stuff like that, absolutely. But the residential, it's a very desirable town, and people will pay to move here. And if they're selling above my assessed value, what happens is, for me to meet stats from the DOR, I have to increase those. You've got developers. We can look at the numbers on the number of parcels of increase over the years. That tells you developers are gonna build here because they know they can sell their houses for 900,000. That's,
inventory-wise, you've added 200 additional residences. You know, on the other side, there's been 79. You know, percentage-wise, it's a 5% increase on the residential, but only, you know, but it's 10% or 11% on the commercial industrial. But numbers-wise, you've more than 2 times, almost 3 times, the residential properties have,
right,
number of parcels that have come online, new parcels, new development, you
yes.
know, in 10 years. So, yeah, but that's, we're a bedroom community, so we expect to see that. And again, but of those 200 that have come online, they're not little ranches and little capes.
No.
You know, there's significant structures, so.
Just a quick question on that. When someone gets an appraisal done, when they're remortgaging their home, and the process the appraisal goes through, is it similar to what you do?
It depends. The first thing that I ask, because I've had a lot of people cross the counter and they'll say, I just had my house appraised and that isn't what the bank said it's worth.
Right.
Well, there are many facets that go into an appraisal. The first thing I look at, I will ask them for a copy. I don't even want to talk unless I can see a copy of the appraisal. Because I need to know, in that appraisal, there's going to be a line, and it's going to answer my question. The purpose of this appraisal is X. Because if it's for a refinance, we've all refinanced. When they did your appraisal, it's usually 15% what you could actually put it on the market for. Why? Because there's always a reserve. Always. The
50%
banks
more or less?
always have, the appraisal will come in
Lower?
13% lower. Always. There's always gonna be a reserve. If it was for an estate, for estate taxes, that's not gonna serve my purpose any, because what they're doing is they're collecting all the data from the estate to get it to a certain number. And I don't mean to offend any estate attorneys or anything, but that's reality.
Don't do that work, don't worry.
That's, I know, Sean, I looked at you and I went, oh. But that's reality. So the first thing I do is I open up and I sift through that small forest of trees to find that line that says the purpose of this appraisal
Okay.
is for X.
The only reason I ask is I have had in the last year, several people in the community come to me and say, I've had an appraisal and it's far less than what my bill says, my value is on my home. And I just wanted to make sure that that gets publicly answered, because I had assumed it was exactly what you were talking about.
And the other thing too is an appraisal is done upon that date of service. We're always a year behind in value. But I mean, we can look and see if we're talking just residential, our values have not gone down. Our values have not gone down.
Just a question, though, to the board. Let's say we do the analysis, and this comes back at 12%.
I'm sorry?
If this comes back at 12%, the overall, right, 12%, do you feel that's a balanced percentage of increase over 10 years?
I think this, Mike, I think there are other factors that you have to take into consideration too. And one of the things we don't know is, in a case a lot of these properties are rented to a number of tenants, you know, what's not rented, which has, if a property is 100% rented in an area, it probably is more valuable than one that is not. And I
Right.
don't know how the assessor goes around figuring those kinds of things out. I think the analysis has to be deeper than that. I mean, this is a good start. I'm not shooting this down. I'm just saying that there are other things that, when you're comparing apples and oranges.
But Bob, it's the same thing with residential properties too. You can have residential properties that, as Deb said, are in a development that are desirable as opposed to another house
Yeah.
that's in a less desirable area. So, I mean, you have to, that's why you use the median as opposed to pinpointing certain properties or
Right,
certain.
but the median does have the vacancies factors extracted from it to
Correct.
come to an assessed valuation for that particular year.
Right.
So that, as the
And the
vacancy
expenses.
factors change, and as we all know, the market here for R&D type property has changed significantly over the last 5 years, never mind 10 years. So are we okay with it? I think it is what it is, but as Bob said, it's kind of apples to oranges. Unless you dissect if you take the full valuation of all the commercial industrial property, not extracting the vacancy rates, say, what was it? How did it do?
As a raw number.
As a raw number to see what those properties, because the vacancy rates on residential properties are,
Right.
it's low, it's nothing. So the residential is a true number as to what's occurred. The commercial industrial property has other factors into it that affect the median price. So to me, what you want to do, if you want apples to apples, you take the full valuation of what happened with the residential, and then the full valuation before adjustments on the commercial industrial, and then you'll see a more true number. It'll go up some. It won't match the 30%, but by the same token, I think, you look at our location and you look at North Reading, it's the same problem we've been dealing with for years. How do we attract business development here in North Reading? We don't have sewage. Our property values here are less than they are in Reading, than they are in Wilmington, than they are in Andover, because of the amenities that are offered to those properties, through sewage. They can have greater developments, larger buildings, because they don't need the space for septic systems, treatment plants. So if we want to get to, I think what you're looking for, a true number is a comparison between the valuation of commercial industrial properties and residential properties. We need to do it before deductions.
We need to get to the raw number on the
Right.
commercial and industrial only. Remove the personal property out of the equation and just come up with that raw number and get that median number from there. And like I say, you're not gonna be at 30% or 32%.
No, and I wouldn't expect us to be.
Yeah, it
I
just
would've,
wouldn't
but-
happen in a community like
But
that.
and again, when
10%,
you-
12%
Michael,
still.
when you're looking at the NOI on a business, an investment property, that's net of vacancy. It's, what did you collect for rent? Okay, what did I have for expenses? That includes the vacancy rate.
Correct.
The NOI includes.
Right.
So if you're gonna work strictly off the NOI, and the tax returns and the leases, that's one way of looking at it. That's the income approach. If you're gonna look at the sales approach, as far as its potential, that's gonna be greater. Because
Yeah, but we don't tax
but you're
that.
gonna take a vacancy rate even on that, you take a vacancy rate of, 10, 15, 25%, whatever the factors are going to be, depending upon the type of property.
Right.
Right, but we don't
I mean,
tax
I
on
look at
that,
these
on
things
the
all day long,
CIP
so-
side. We tax like that on the residential side.
We tax like what?
Well, we tax on, the residential is strictly market-driven and cost-driven.
What-
On the commercial and
Yes.
industrial, there's actually 3 different approaches to value that have to
Very rarely do
meet
they take an income
and-
approach on a residential.
And correlate within a percentage point to certify that tax rate with the DOR, and that's your sales your cost and an income. And those have a very, very stringent margin that it has to be within. Do you have a lot of sales for commercial industrial? No, you have a very small sampling.
Oh, yeah.
That's why it's not weighted so much. The value, the end value, is not weighted so much on that. It's weighted more on your income and your cost. I mean, the reason I spent so much time at Milton Cat was because I wanted to know that cost number. I needed to know. I find out what concrete's going for. Going for $2.32 a square foot right now. You have to know what your lumber costs are. You have to know what your steel costs are. You have to know those numbers. And keeping up with that marketplace, you have to do that to get to the good numbers and to stay within those margins.
Sean, don't forget John.
Mr. Murphy?
Yeah, just two quick things. One
You gotta come to
is-
the microphone. You gotta come to the microphone, just identify yourself, I'm sorry.
John Murphy, just two quick things. One, Mike, you mentioned earlier about, the appraised value, and they get their house appraised, and then, it's lower than the tax bill. And if they go back a number of years, you go back to kind of the boom years, people would get their house appraised to refinance, and, it'd be $100,000 over the assessed value. Because the community's always
A year
a year
behind.
to 18 months behind, and the bank's assessments are doing it on a sales value at a point
At that
in
day.
time. And they're also adding that reserve. And in particular, in the current environment, they're truly adding that reserve, okay? So I think in the current environment, after what we went through in 8, 9, and 10, I'm not sure anywhere in the country that we have, somebody's appraised value coming in at or above assessed value. So that's, I just want to comment on that, because I know you said people have asked you.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what's happening.
Well, that's pretty much what
happened
the
to
answer
them.
was I had given them, but I was hoping that I would hear it again tonight, so
Yeah.
people at home
Oh,
watching,
okay, I
and
just,
they can hear from you guys, not just me.
and then on the apples and oranges, I mean, having sat through these discussions year after year after year, on this side and been on that side as well, it is apples and oranges, because and so the 30 and then the other number ends up being 12 or 13 or 14, whatever the number turns out to be. The issue here is that on the residential side, use a sales approach. That's what the assessor's office does.
Mhm.
On the commercial industrial side, it's the income value of the property.
Based on the information that's provided.
Based on the, right.
But which isn't being provided.
Which is a separate issue. But
Well,
even in a perfect world, it's using a different approach.
Oh, yeah.
So you're not gonna get a balanced approach. It's apples
I'm
and
not
oranges.
saying it's gonna
apples
be,
and oranges.
you can't say it's balanced, but I'm not looking for an even approach, right? But you can't say it's balanced. I'm not looking for.
I don't think I can say it's balanced. I don't think I can say it's unbalanced. I mean,
No, it is what it is. I mean, we're not, I mean, in an ideal world.
The value of a home is what someone's willing to-
One at a time.
But that doesn't happen.
One at a time.
the value of a home is what someone's willing to pay for it.
I understand.
The value of a commercial property, if it's for sale, is what someone's willing to pay for it.
That's-
Not to pick on Pat, but the Horseshoe Grill is assessed based on what it produces. If Pat decided to sell it, and someone wanted to buy it, and it wasn't gonna be a restaurant,
Right.
his sales value is likely to still be done based on it being a restaurant.
That's right.
But
Because that's the.
because that's what the
current
bank's gonna do. So if someone wants to go in and put, I don't know what kind of a manufacturing business in there, the bank's gonna lend based on it being a restaurant, that's what it is.
It's the highest and best use,
It's highest and best use.
based on its construction.
Okay, so that's what Pat's gonna be able to sell it for. Then, if he sells it, and the manufacturing goes in there, and now that's the highest and best use,
a year or two down the road, she'll be assessing it based on the income it's producing. So if it's producing, some technology product that is hotter than an iPhone, we'll get a ton of dough for it. That's the reality of it. So that's why it's so, it is, when you look at this stuff, it's crazy, but that's the way it works. That's how every community in the Commonwealth does this stuff.
Well, Reading went through this same exercise 2 years ago, right? And they had an 18% increase across the board, right?
Because what Reading did is what Steve suggested, which was, when they didn't have the data, they went and got what they believed to be
The true
the
value.
Fair
best,
market value.
best true data they could come up with.
That's why
And
I
they
brought
got,
this
and they
up.
got a big increase, and then they got, I think it was only a handful, or
I
one.
talked to Peter.
Okay.
One.
Okay, so they were all, we heard it on the chamber side, at the board meetings, at events, we got phone calls, I mean, they were all up in arms. I mean, we got new members from it too, because they joined the chamber. We want you to help us. But in the end, they couldn't refute the data. So so Steve's right. The only thing I would add is, if you're gonna send it to them, calculate it, if they didn't give you the data, calculate it the highest and best use, assess them to 250 anyway. So take the 250
Yeah, that's fine.
and assess it for what you think it's worth. I mean, a buck's a buck.
Yeah.
So anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to add one thing in here. On the sheet, on the CIP property analysis side, on the income and expense return side, where you see all those unknowns, there are actually 3 years that INEs were sent out because they were reval years. That's mandate. You wouldn't have had a certified tax rate. I could not find them. So for me to tell you what the percentage was, they're in a I mean, it's been moved, we've moved since 2003, and to sit there and count them all up, I mean, time is just so.
Has automation helped you for the future?
Excuse me?
Has automation been able to help you for the future? Or do we still do it the same way that we've done it?
Oh, no. No, my stuff is pretty much all automated, but like I said, I don't have anything to put it on PowerPoint or anything, but
That's fine. This is
I
perfect.
can talk.
That's perfect. That's
Right.
all I'd ask.
So, but there were, and I just want to make that clear, you do have 3 years, and I figured out which years they would have been while I'm standing here, that were sent out. Otherwise, you wouldn't have had a certified tax rate. So they were brought back. And they may have gotten sent to retention, I don't know.
Well, the way I see it is, the goal is to get to as close to 100% compliance, commercial and industrial. If you don't get it, you assess highest and best use, maximum value, assess them a $250 fine, and it's going to get us there. And then you're going to end up with, look, everyone recognizes we're a bedroom community, you're going to get to a fear approach. You're never going to get to a balanced approach just because of the makeup of the community,
Right.
the lack of sewerage at this point, but I think that's the goal.
That's a much better term, a fair approach.
I have no problem with that.
Now, what do we think is achievable in relation to any suggestions you may have heard this evening?
I think taking the approach of the data that we have right now, I'd like to see what the response is with the 250. That's in place, it's gonna happen. Next year is a revaluation year. That's a very big year, and I already have a folder on goals and objectives that have to be done, early in the year so that we're not crunch time. When it comes to the commercial and the industrial, yes, we're being
You've sent out the
aggressive.
information, so you haven't informed them as to what you've come to a conclusion yet on the $250 deal. For those that haven't complied,
Mhm.
you send out a second notice, then a third notice, and then you come to a conclusion as to what the value is, and assess them an additional $250.
The
Correct.
ones that did not comply, Steve, their rental rates, I did look back at them. I did look back at what their expenses, they're still in range. They're still in range. There wasn't a whole lot of change with the
You
data
mean
I
some years
did
that
get.
were in compliance and other years that were.
When you say compliance, you mean
With
returning,
your income and expense return.
returning them.
Right.
I can only speak for those 2 years that I'm
Right,
giving
so
you.
you're talking 53%.
So,
So I'm
yeah,
saying,
two-
almost 50% of the commercial industrial
Right.
property owners did not comply with your request.
Correct.
So you didn't have any data other than
What
market
I
data
had
that
and
you're
what I
doing
consumed from other communities
and
and
other
from my
research and
internet
things that you covered.
connections.
Okay.
And I did, we do. We look at the rental rates. We do look to see where they're at. And I'm talking our river parks. I'm talking Concord streets. I'm talking our main streets here. I have to look at those. Those are our commercial and industrial base there. I'm not talking, the small little ones if they didn't comply. You know what I'm saying? I have to pick and choose where the money is and where I can go after it and what I can do. At the end of the day, I would say, I would be very confident in telling you River Park is where it should be.
Sure.
And Concord Street, where we have some properties
I'm
that
gonna try to
need.
put this together. If you still have the opportunity to make an adjustment for this fiscal 2013, that will be impacted when the final tax rate is set, right? And you use your own set of comps where business leaseholders or business owners haven't, not owners, but property owners haven't
Leasees.
filed the forms, and you use those numbers, right? It would seem to me, as Steve has said, at that point, you're gonna get in February, a number of requests for abatements, at which point you have the opportunity to get the information you need, or leave it the way it is, and, So, I don't think we have to wait until next year to
Right.
get this implemented.
But then that's gonna be, I would have to ask the board. Right now, I have my certification for growth, I have my certification for values, I have my for me to get to tax classification, I have to get all this stuff done. Get it certified so that I can give you a potential rate.
It's too late.
So, exactly. That's why all this stuff is done. These income and expense forms go out January, February. By the time we send out the final notice, because 30 days, you're talking April, May. In the month of April and May is when the building permits are being done, sales are being done, the analysis is being done. So that when I get to the month of September, I'm working on final numbers, getting everything all set in stone so I can get it into the DOR so that we can have a certified timely
Okay,
rate.
so it can't be done this fiscal year?
No,
But you're going to send out in January and February and March or whatever,
yep.
these requests. So what's the timeline so that this is in place for fiscal 2014?
It will be in place for 2013 because that analysis from the
No,
INEs
it'd
are
be
done.
14, I think.
FY 14.
14,
FY
14
Okay.
will be in place. It won't be for the preliminary bill, but it will be done for the actual bill because don't forget, we're also in a certification year, which adds a lot to that. So it would be for the actual bill, that would be in place. Whether we look at that and we're very aggressive on rental rates, very limited on vacancy rates instead of 5%, maybe 2%. And all that has to come in line with certification too. So I can't say to you, it'll be done by the month of July. I can't say to you, it'll be done by the month of August. I can't do that because it is a certification year. And with that, that's just another whole a whole lot of work in
So if I
itself.
listen to you carefully,
Hmm.
you're saying that you may not even implement this in 2014.
No, I'm not saying that.
She will, but it
No,
won't be.
I'm not.
It won't be realized until the February.
Actual bill.
Right.
Yeah, that is fiscal 2014.
14, correct.
Right,
14.
right, right.
Yeah,
Well, you
Oh,
know,
unless
it's always an estimated bill, the first two bills.
Right, right.
Right, so
I-
it's that February bill that then kicks off those people that are unhappy because now they've got the true assessment
Right.
Right.
and their true bill,
Yeah.
that they go and file for an abatement.
I do try to get a lot of the work done for the preliminary bill, like my new construction. I can hold that off and put it all on the actual, but I'd rather pick it up and get it put on the preliminary, then it's evened off for the taxpayer. It's not such a cumbersome amount to come up with. The other thing I do is I pick up the new personal property accounts for the preliminary bill. So I wish I could say that we would know in the month of July what that approach would bring us in value. Because I think that's what you're asking me,
No,
what the
no, I
increase
wasn't
would
asking
be in
that. I wasn't
value.
asking what it meant in value. I was asking, based on what Steve has suggested, which I
Mhm.
think the board is pretty much on board on, right? When will it be implemented?
The fiscal year 14.
And then you start, after you said that, you started talking about the reval and
Mhm.
timing, and I'm asking the question again. Are you assuring us that it still can be done in 2014?
Yes.
Yeah,
I
think the
thought
difference
you
was
wanted an
No,
I
no.
thought you wanted a certain time, and I
Well, I
knew
said
I couldn't
timeline
commit
because I
to
was
that.
trying to understand the steps that you had to take to get to the point where you could, implement an appropriate adjustment to their tax bill as a result of your appraisal of their income, average income versus, what information is in your current database,
Okay.
to force them to come back and give us real information.
See, I can promise you, it will be, the new methodology will be in place for 2014. Starting those in 2012 and what we've collected for 2013, I have taken that and started creating my own database. The reason I've done that is so that I can kind of keep track of trends. I can keep track of the analysis to find out how it's changing the shifts one way or the other, or is there a shift? So my database is small, it's only 2 years, but next year will be the third. Do I see a problem implementing it for 2014? Absolutely not. No.
Okay.
It
So
will
for
be
the-
done.
For the 19th, you'll adjust this slide just to show commercial industrial. And also, you'll give us the value with no vacancy versus the value.
Right, the
with
raw
vac-
value.
Right.
And then you'll have a separate column for your
Right.
personal property taxes.
One thing to remember, a lot of our values are on costs, like not every single property is valued on income.
Mhm.
Some of them are costs, some of them are income. So when it comes down to giving you the median, I'm going to extract just the median to change that and figure out how many properties are income produced by tax bill, how many are cost produced by tax bill. I think we're gonna see another misconstrued number up there. You know what I'm saying? Whereas I've gotta take my income and my cost numbers from all properties and come up with that median. Otherwise, we're gonna be kinda in the same boat.
Mr. Briscoe?
Can you give me an example of an income business and a cost business?
Your income producing properties would be your River Park, would be Ryer's store.
Okay.
A cost business would be your small mom and pop stores, your small little businesses. And the reason that is because the square footage of the building, if it's say 1,600 square feet, and I apply a $12 rental rate, say it's retail, and I apply $12 on that, and then I'm applying 5% vacancy in the range, and then another 15% for expenses, I'm never gonna hit that income. So even if they're paying $12, or if I went on a high end and went to 15, I'm still always gonna be low. So what I do is, instead of valuing them tax bill wise on the income, they get tax billed on the cost, which is the higher number.
Cost of what?
Cost to build less depreciation.
Okay.
Replacement cost.
All right. Very good. Anything-
That's great.
Anything else?
Really help understand it. Thank you so
Anyone
much.
in the audience? Mr. Carucci?
I don't know why I come to these meetings. I came for one thing and I get involved in something else. You stand there because I'm not interested. I look better with you.
Oh, okay, I'll
My
stay
time.
right. I'll stay right
The only thing I can say is, a little bit, the town is its own worst enemy. In the past 10 years, on Route 28, you rezoned commercial property to residential, okay? There's 3 parcels out there, so that kind of hurts a little bit. I was going to mention that I don't have the option in my business to raise the rent per square footage, all right? We talk about the mom and pop, that's me. So I'm looking at that part of it, okay? And that's all I wanted to say. But the big thing is, when you rezone property and you take it out of the commercial, I think that hurts.
That's a good, I never thought of that.
Thank you. All right. Well, we look
Thanks
forward
for the
to seeing you again
education.
on the 19th. Thank you very much for coming in this evening. We appreciate it. Motion to go into executive session?
Mr. Chairman, I move to enter into executive session for the purposes of collective bargaining and litigation strategy. Such sessions in open session will have a detrimental impact on the town, and further, the Board of Selectmen will return to open session for the sole purpose of adjournment.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. O'Leary.
Aye.
Mr. Fode.
Aye.
Mr. Misery.
Aye.
Mr. Prisco. Aye. Chair votes aye.